Hi Bookish Besties, my name is Brittany. This is Rescues and Reads. Thank you so much for joining me here today. If you are new, welcome. I'm so glad you're here. And if you're already subscribed, as always, I appreciate your continued support. Thank you for returning to another video. Today we're here to talk about anticipated releases for 2025. All right, everyone, it is already that time. It is time to look ahead to 2025 to see what books are scheduled to be released. The books that I'm talking about here today are books that I am specifically anticipating for 2025. To be honest, y'all, there are a lot of them. I have over 30 books that I plan on mentioning in this video. So in order to make sure that we are not sitting here for actual days, I am going to try to be as brief as possible when talking about the books. So if I can get away with just reading a little blurb here and there, that is what I'm going to do because, like I said, there are a lot of them. Now, of course, I'm going to give the caveat here. The publishing dates that I have are correct as of now, but they absolutely might change. This list is not meant to be comprehensive, even for my own tastes. These are just the books that I have compiled over the past several weeks that I know are supposed to come out in 2025 that I am legitimately looking forward to. So we're going to go ahead and just jump right in. I'm going to be talking about these releases by month, and then I'm going to try to keep them in order by date of release. But I'm sorry if I do get any out of order. All right, starting of course with January. We have what is definitely perhaps one of my most anticipated releases of the entirety of the year. That is the newest release from Adrienne Young called A Sea of Unspoken Things. I have absolutely adored the adult releases that I've read by Adrienne Young. She is quickly becoming one of my favorite magical realism authors. This blurb says, in a captivating and atmospheric novel, a woman investigates her twin brother's mysterious death while confronting the ghosts of her own haunted past. In the same vein as her other two releases, this is going to take place in yet another small town. This is going to be in the secluded town of Six Rivers, California, and I am absolutely here for it. I don't need to know any more than that to know that this is going to be at the top of my to read list for 2025, and I am hoping that it is going to be a January release for Book of the Month. Her other two releases have been Book of the Month releases, and it wasn't featured as an early release for December. So I'm really hoping that Book of the Month once again features her book. Moving on into the 14th of January, we have the newest release from Grady Hendrix called Witchcraft for Wayward Girls. This says, they call them wayward girls, loose girls, girls who grew up too fast, and they're sent to Wellwood House in St. Augustine, Florida, where unwed mothers are hidden by their families to have their babies in secret, to give them up for adoption, and most important of all, to forget any of it ever happened. 15-year-old Fern arrives at the home in the sweltering summer of 1970, pregnant, terrified, and alone. Under the watchful eye of the stern Miss Wellwood, she meets a dozen other girls in the same predicament. There's Rose, a hippie who insists she's going to find a way to keep her baby and escape to a commune, and Zinnia, a budding musician who plans to marry her baby's father, and Holly, a wisp of a girl barely 14, mute and pregnant by no one knows who. Everything the girls eat, every moment of their waking day, and everything they're allowed to talk about is strictly controlled by adults who claim they know what's best for them. Then Fern meets a librarian who gives her an occult book about witchcraft, and power is in the hands of the girls for the first time in their lives. But power can destroy as easily as it creates, and it's never given freely. There's always a price to be paid, and it's usually paid in blood. All right, so we are definitely in a historical setting here. We have girls being sent away to have babies and forget things ever happened, and it sounds like they are finally going to have some power through witchcraft put into their hands. I really appreciate Grady's writing because he has a tendency of equally balancing humor and horror, and like I said, I've really enjoyed the past 3 books, so I'm looking forward to this one as well. Also on the 14th, we have the newest release from Lane Fargo called The Favorites. I read a book by her recently called They Never Learn. I believe that I read it for the Amazing Readathon, and I really enjoyed it. It wasn't necessarily anything mind-blowing, but it did make me want to read more from her. Now, this book is actually very different from They Never Learn. I believe this is going to be more contemporary in nature. This says, to the world they were a scandal, to each other an obsession. An epic love story set in the sparkling savage sphere of elite figure skating, starring a woman determined to carve her own path on and off the ice. This quote from Jodi Picoult says, part Wuthering Heights and part Daisy Jones and the Six. This novel is as brilliantly choreographed as a gold medal performance and will keep you guessing until its last page. So I'm actually really intrigued by the comparison. I literally just finished Wuthering Heights a couple of weeks ago, and I absolutely loved how absolutely awful all of the characters were in that. And then this is being compared to Daisy Jones and the Six, but that was about like a rock group in the 70s, so I'm not entirely sure what the comparison means in terms of elite figure skating, but I'm here for it. This sounds like it could be a really good time, and I'm intrigued. And the final one that I have on the 14th is actually a book that is kind of giving me Adrienne Young vibes. It's a book called The Vanishing of Josephine Reynolds by Jennifer Moorman. I have never heard of this author. I have never read anything by this author, but I'm just really digging the vibes of this story. This says, widowed at 35, Josephine Reynolds wishes she could disappear, but her concerned sister convinces her to buy their ancestral home, a craftsman bungalow in disrepair and foreclosure. It's a welcome distraction, and Josephine can't believe her luck when she finds the home's original door in a salvage yard. When she installs the door and steps through it, quick, Josephine is transported into 1927, where she meets her great-grandmother Alma, a vivacious and daring woman running an illegal speakeasy in the bungalow's basement. Immersed in the vibrant jazz age, Josephine forms a profound bond with Alma, only to discover upon her return to the present that history has been altered. Alma's life was tragically cut short in a speakeasy raid just a week after their fateful meeting. Josephine has a chilling revelation. Her own existence is unraveling, vanishing, and she must race against time to rewrite history. Josephine is desperate to not only save Alma, but save her own future in a time-bending journey where past and present intertwine in a desperate battle for survival. I absolutely love the concept of this. This is very much giving me June Farrow vibes, and I am here for it. Like I said, I have never heard of this author before, but when I saw this was a release and I looked into it, I was like, yes, sign me up. Instant add to TBR, because I'm just loving the sound of this one and I'm excited for it. I only have one release to mention for January 21st, and that is Onyx Storm by Rebecca Yarros. This is the third and I believe final book in the Fourth Wing saga. I can't necessarily say that I'm anticipating it so much just because I haven't actually read the second book in the series, but I think that might be the very first book that I read for fantasy in terms of the new year. I might even try to get to it this year, but I don't know. Things are a little bit crazy and I don't know if I would be able to finish it before the end of the year. I really do need to get on with reading the second book. All right, moving on into the last week of January. On the 28th, we have the newest release from Allison Galen called We Are Watching. I have very much enjoyed the thrillers that I've read by Allison Galen. Some have been more memorable than the others, but I absolutely believe that The Collective is probably one of my favorite thrillers of all time. I just absolutely loved everything about that book, and I will probably read anything that she puts out going forward. This blurb says that this is a slick, riveting, and all too plausible tale of psychological suspense where a mother is desperate to protect her family as they become targets of a group of violent conspiracy theorists. I'm not going to read anything more than that. I'm going to try to go into this one a little bit blind, but like I said, I have really enjoyed Allison Galen in the past, and I think I'm just going to trust her with a story and trust that I'm going to really enjoy it. Also on the 28th, we have the newest release from Frida McFadden. I do believe that she actually has at least one more book coming out in 2025. I'm not going to bother mentioning it here. We all know that I enjoy Frida McFadden, and I will probably pick up everything she writes, especially because she writes popcorn thrillers that are just a good, fun, fast time. They don't necessarily have to have any substance, but I enjoy them all the same. This says, Tegan is 8 months pregnant, alone, and desperately wants to put her crumbling life in the rearview mirror. So she hits the road, planning to stay with her brother until she can figure out her next move. But she doesn't realize she's heading straight into a blizzard. She never arrives at her destination. Stranded in rural Maine with a dead car and broken ankle, Tegan worries she's made a terrible mistake. Then a miracle occurs. She is rescued by a couple who offers her a room in their warm cabin until the snow clears. But something isn't right. Tegan believes she was waiting out the storm, but as time ticks by, she comes to realize she is in grave danger. This safe haven isn't what she thought it was, and staying here may have been her most deadly mistake yet. And now she must do whatever it takes to save herself and her unborn child. I don't necessarily love the pregnancy aspect of this. Y'all know how I feel about books featuring children and babies and things like that, and I found that every time I read a book where there's a pregnant woman who is in some kind of danger, every page is like, I gotta save my baby, I gotta save my baby, I gotta do what I can to save my baby. And it's like, we get it, you're pregnant, you want to save your baby. We can kind of move on from that, you know what I mean? So of course I'm going to be reading this, I'm going to give this a shot, but I don't necessarily think I'm going to love the pregnancy angle of it, but it could definitely increase the stakes of the story. So we are going to see what Frida McFadden is able to do with this one. And then the final release that I have for January is Good Dirt by Charmaine Wilkerson. Now she wrote Black Cake, which got a lot of positive praise. I never actually read that one. I'd be willing to go back and read it, but I heard a lot of mixed things about it. I heard that it tried to do too much and that there was a lot of social commentary on just about anything that you could have social commentary about, but I really liked the synopsis of this one, so I might be willing to give this one a shot. This says, when 10-year-old Ebby Freeman heard the gunshot, time stopped, and when she saw her brother Baz lying on the floor surrounded by a shattered piece of a centuries-old jar, life as Ebby knew it shattered as well. The crime was never solved, and because the Freemans were one of the only Black families in a particularly well-to-do enclave of New England, the case has had an enduring voyeuristic pull for the public. The last thing the Freemans want is another media frenzy splashing their family across the papers. But when Ebby's high-profile romance falls apart without any explanation, that's exactly what they get. So Ebby flees to France, only for her past to follow her there. And as she tries to process what's happened, she begins to think about the other loss her family suffered on that day 18 years ago. The stoneware jar that had been in their family for generations, brought north by an enslaved ancestor. But little does she know that the handcrafted piece of pottery held more than just her family's history. It might also hold the key to unlocking her own future. In this sweeping, evocative novel, Charmaine Wilkerson brings to life a multi-generational epic that examines how the past informs our present. So like I said, I read the synopsis of this and I was instantly intrigued. So I definitely think that I would be willing to make this the very first book that I read by Charmaine Wilkerson. All right, moving on into February, starting with the 4th of February, we have the newest release from Ali Hazelwood called Deep End. Ali Hazelwood has been a little bit hit or miss for me. I absolutely adored The Love Hypothesis, didn't like Love on the Brain almost at all, and I also really appreciated Love Theoretically. So I've had a good time with her books, and I think that she's kind of been redeemed after Love Theoretically. So I'm definitely willing to to read this one. I haven't read the paranormal romance and I haven't read her young adult romance, and I don't think that I will, but this is actually a new adult slash college age romance that I am interested in. It says this is about a competitive diver and an ace swimmer who jump into forbidden waters in this steamy college romance from the New York Times bestselling author of The Love Hypothesis. I am definitely here for a college age romance. I have really come to kind of trust Allie Hazelwood with her ability to write a romance despite my feelings about Love on the Brain. So I'm definitely going to give this one a shot, and if it doesn't work out for me, maybe I will reevaluate my continuation with Allie Hazelwood, but this is definitely on my TBR for 2025. Another one that I'm highly anticipating that is coming out on the 4th is Kate Alice Marshall's newest release called A Killing Cold. I very much loved What Lies in the Woods, but then her follow-up novel to that, No One Can Know, was just meh, kind of forgettable. I remember enjoying it while I was reading it, but I remember literally nothing about it, so I want to see if she can kind of redeem that with this one. This quick blurb just says, a woman invited to her wealthy fiance's family retreat realizes they are hiding a terrible secret, and that she's been there before. This is another one that I'm going to read regardless of the synopsis, and I'm totally okay going into it a little bit blind, but it sounds like her fiance and his family are not who they say that they are, and it sounds like she might have a past with them that she's only just now remembering. So again, I'm really highly anticipating this one, and I expect it to live up to my expectations. Moving on into the 11th, I have a thriller that really caught my attention because it has to do with Hamilton. It is called The Last Hamilton by Jen Bergman. And this blurb just says, after the last heir of Alexander Hamilton's line is murdered, her heartbroken husband and best friend team up in this twisty thriller where a mysterious death uncovers not just an ancient secret society, but the treasure it holds. Perfect for fans of Dan Brown and Sarah Penner. Yeah, as I was reading that blurb, I was like, this sounds very Da Vinci Code-esque. And I don't necessarily love books like that just because they are very much about the plot and there is very little character development going on here, but I absolutely love the synopsis of this. I love a thriller that is based around the line of Alexander Hamilton. I'm absolutely obsessed with anything to do with Alexander Hamilton, or more specifically Eliza Hamilton. So this really caught my attention and I'm willing to give it a shot. This again is another author that I have never heard from. I don't know if this is a debut or not, but I would be willing to give it a shot. All right, and then the very last book that I want to mention for February is another one that I'm highly anticipating. It is yet another thriller, this time the newest release from Gillian McAllister, called Famous Last Words. I absolutely adored Wrong Place, Wrong Time. I thought that was so well done, and it was an interesting take on time travel, and I enjoyed the way that Gillian McAllister incorporated it into her stories. I didn't enjoy Just Another Missing Person quite as much, but I did think it was well written and it had an interesting point of view included in it. So this is another author that I do believe that I will probably check out every single one of her works going forward, just based on how much I enjoyed Wrong Place, Wrong Time. This says, this is an addictive thriller about a new mother's world upended when her husband commits a terrifying crime. How well does she truly know the man she loves? And what danger does she face if her entire life has been built on a lie? So this is very much, do you know the man you married? It sounds like there's probably something going on with him that she is not aware of, and she's going to have to figure out what it is, all while trying to juggle her baby and all of this stuff that is going on. Right off the bat, just from reading the synopsis of this seems pretty intense, and I'm intrigued by it. All right, moving on into March, I actually only have 4 to talk about at this time. The first, of course, is the newest release by Ashley Winstead called This Book Will Bury Me. This blurb just says that it is a chilling, compulsive story of 5 amateur sleuths whose hunt for an elusive killer catapults them into danger as the world watches. Okay, consider me intrigued. I haven't actually read the full synopsis of this, but I don't really need to. Ashley Winstead is another author. She's very hit or miss for me. I don't love everything that she writes, but because of my love of In My Dreams I Hold a Knife, I will definitely be on the lookout for her stories in the future. And just based off of that little blurb there and some of the scanning that I've done of the synopsis, this seems like it's going to be something that is right up my alley, and I'm really intrigued. Ashley Winstead has proven that she is able to do multiple perspectives very well, and I think that she's going to be able to do the same thing here. So I am looking forward to this one for sure. Also, as a quick correction, I was misreading my list. This is not coming out on the 4th. This is coming out on the 25th. So this should have been at the end of the list, so I apologize about that, but the 25th is correct. What is coming out on March 4th is the newest release in the Finley Donovan series called Finley Donovan Digs Her Own Grave. I actually have yet to read the 4th book, so I need to do that pretty soon. I have a great time with the series. I have really enjoyed all of them. I think the 2nd book is still my favorite to this day. They're just a wild time. You definitely have to suspend disbelief, but I really feel like the stakes in these books are higher than in a traditional cozy. But it is a really good, solid, fun time, and I highly recommend if you are looking for something like that. And the final book that I have for March comes out on the 18th. It is the newest historical fiction from Susan Meisner called A Map to Paradise. Susan Meisner has quickly become one of my favorite historical fiction writers. I feel like she covers topics and storylines that I do not often see covered in historical fiction, and I've just really appreciated the stories that she's able to craft. This says 1956 Malibu, California. Something is not right on Paradise Circle. With her name on the Hollywood blacklist and her life on hold, starlet Melanie Cole has little choice in company. There is her next door neighbor Elwood, but the screenwriter's agoraphobia allows for just short chats through open windows. He's her sole confidant though, as she and her housekeeper Eva, an immigrant from war-torn Europe, rarely make conversation. Then one early morning, Melanie and Eve spot Elwood's sister-in-law and caretaker June digging in his beloved rose garden. After that, they don't see Elwood at all anymore. Where could a man who never leaves the house possibly have gone? As they try to find out if something has happened to him, unexpected secrets are revealed among all three women, leading to an alliance that seems the only way for any of them to hold on to what they can still call their own. But it's a fragile pact, and one little spark could send it all up in smoke. Okay, so it sounds like this could be multi-perspective with these three different women who it sounds like could become involved in like some kind of murder cover-up. I don't know. I'm really intrigued by this. Count me in. It's Susan Meisner. I really don't need to know any more than that. This is absolutely going on my TBR. All right, moving on into April. I once again only have 3 to talk to you about, but there are some heavy hitters coming out in April. Starting with April 1st, we have the newest release from Abby Jimenez called Say You'll Remember Me. This says, there might be no such thing as a perfect guy, but Xavier Rush comes disastrously close. A gorgeous veterinarian giving Greek god vibes all while cuddling a tiny kitten? Immediately yes. That is until Xavier opens his mouth and proves that even sculpted gods can say the absolute wrong thing. Like, really wrong. Of course, there's nothing Samantha loves more than proving an asshole wrong. Unless, of course, he can admit he made a mistake. But after one incredibly and seemingly endless date, possibly the best in living history, Samantha is forced to admit the truth, that her family is in crisis and any kind of relationship would be impossible. Samantha begs Xavier to forget her, to remember their night together as a perfect moment, as crushing as that may be. Only no amount of distance or time is nearly enough to forget that something between them, and the only thing better than one single perfect memory is to make a life, and even a love, worth remembering. Okay, so I'm not entirely sure if the synopsis is doing anything for me right off the bat, but again, Abby Jimenez is pretty much an author that I'm going to read everything she writes. The last 2 books that I read by her were not necessarily up to my expectations for her, but I do still think she has the ability to craft a really solid romance, and she typically does harder hitting elements really well. Also on the 1st, we have the newest thriller release from Julia Bartz called The Last Session. Julia Bartz wrote The Writing Retreat, and that wasn't anything mind-blowing, but I had a really great time with it, and it was very different from what I was expecting it to be, and so I kind of appreciated what Julia Bartz was able to do with the story. This one says that this is a white-knuckled, locked-room thriller about a social worker who, after coming face-to-face with her dark past, must infiltrate a mysterious wellness center in the deserts of New Mexico. So once again, this sounds like it's going to have the isolationist aspect to it, so it seems like Julia Bartz has a comfort zone here that she is not straying from, but this is certainly one that I would be willing to give a shot. All right, and the final one for April is the other heavy hitter for the month, and that of course is the newest release from Emily Henry called Great Big Beautiful Life. Emily Henry is a little bit up and down for me. There have been books by hers that I have absolutely adored, and there have been books that I've appreciated but not loved, and then there have been books that I have really not liked very much at all, kind of like Happy Place. I have my issues with Emily Henry, but overall I feel like she is a really great writer of contemporaries that feature romances. So this says, Alice Scott is an eternal optimist still dreaming of her big writing break. Hayden Anderson is a Pulitzer Prize winning human thundercloud, and they're both on a balmy little crescent island for the same reason, to write the biography of a woman no one has seen in years, or at least to meet with the octogenarian who claims to be the Margaret Ives, tragic heiress, former tabloid princess, and daughter of one of the most storied and scandalous families of the 20th century. When Margaret invites both of them for a 1-month trial period, after which she'll choose the person who'll tell her story, there are 3 things keeping Alice's head in the game. 1, Alice genuinely likes people, which means people usually like Alice, and she has a whole month to win the legendary woman over. 2, she's ready for this job and the chance to impress her perennially unimpressed family with a serious publication. 3, Hayden Anderson, who should have no reason to be concerned about losing this book, is glowering at her in a shaken to the core way that suggests he does see her as competition. But the problem is Margaret is only giving each of them pieces of her story, pieces they can't swap to put together because of an ironclad NDA, and an inconvenient yearning pulsing between them every time they're in the same room. And it's becoming abundantly clear that their story, just like the tale Margaret's spinning, could be a mystery, tragedy, or love ballad, depending on who's telling it. Okay, so interesting. I feel like Emily Henry typically likes to write characters that are in the writing or the publishing world. Again, we are following authors, only this time they are going to be competing for the opportunity to write a biography. I really think that the way that Emily Henry is approaching this is really interesting because they are competing and they are going to have to prove to this author that they can do it, but each of them is getting different snippets of this author's life, and they're going to have to try to figure out how to write these snippets without the context behind them. You know what I mean? So again, Emily Henry, another author that I'm probably going to read everything that she puts out, and I'm really looking forward to this one. All right, moving on into May, I only only have two to talk to you about, starting with the 6th of May and the next release by Carly Fortune called One Golden Summer. Good things happen at the lake. That's what Alice's grandmother says, and it's true. Alice spent just one summer there at a cottage with Nan when she was 17. It's where she took that photo, the one of 3 grinning teenagers in a yellow speedboat, the image that changed her life. Now Alice lives behind a lens. As a photographer, she's most comfortable on the sidelines, letting other people shine. Lately though, she's been itching for something more, and when Nan falls and breaks her hip, Alice comes up with a plan for them both. Another summer in that magical place, Barry's Bay. As soon as they settle in, their peace is disrupted by a familiar yellow boat and the man driving it. Charlie Florrick was 19 when Alice took this photo from afar. Now he's all grown up, a shameless flirt who manages to make Nan laugh, and Alice longed to be 17 again. Sun-slanted days and warm nights out on the lake with Charlie are a balm for Alice's soul, but when she looks up and sees his piercing green gaze directly on her, she begins to worry for her heart. Because Alice sees people. That's why she is so good at what she does, but she's never met someone who looks and sees her right back. Carly Fortune is another one who I feel has the ability to craft a very strong contemporary romance novel. I absolutely adored Every Summer After, and I really also appreciated Meet Me at the Lake. I had a lot of technical issues with that story, I did, but still at the end of that book, I couldn't stop thinking about it, and I was rooting for the relationship and everything like that. So I just feel like she writes these stories that you get to know the characters and it emotionally impacts you. I still have to read her most recent release to date, but I know that this is one that I'm absolutely going to pick up because I just appreciate Carly Fortune's writing. And then this other release is also on the 6th. It is The Missing Half by Ashley Flowers. So she is actually the host of a #1 true crime podcast called Crime Junkie. That's how she got her start. And she recently wrote a novel a couple of years ago called All Good People Here. And in all honesty, I did not hate that book. I actually really appreciated the overall story and the plot line and everything like that. Was it mind-blowing? No, but I definitely felt it had promise, and I knew that I wanted to read more from her in the future. And so when I saw that she was coming out with a new release, I absolutely added it to my TBR because I do want to give her another chance. So this says, Nicole Nick Monroe is in a rut. At 24, she lives alone in a dinky apartment in her hometown of Mishawaka, Indiana. She's just gotten a DUI and she works the same dead-end job she's been working since high school, a job she only has because her boss is a family friend and feels sorry for her. Everyone has felt sorry for her for the last 7 years since the day her older sister Casey vanished without a trace. On the night Casey went missing, her car was found over 100 miles from home. The driver's door was open and her purse was untouched in the seat next to it. The only real clue in her disappearance was Jules Connor, another young woman from the same area who disappeared in the same way 2 weeks earlier, but with so little for the police to go on, both cases eventually went cold. Nick wants nothing more than to move on from her sister's disappearance and the state it's left her in. But then one day, Jules' sister, Jenna Connor, walks into Nick's life and offers her something she hasn't felt in a long time: hope. What follows is a gripping tale of 2 sisters who will do anything to find their missing halves, even if it means destroying everything they've ever known. Sign me up. I don't know what direction that Ashley Flowers is going to take this in, but I am intrigued, and this has certainly been added to my TBR. All right, guys, we are slowly but surely getting there. I am moving as fast as I can. We are moving into June, which is actually another pretty heavy release month, starting with the 3rd and another one of the books that I am highly anticipating. That is the newest release from Taylor Jenkins Reid called Atmosphere. This says this is an epic new novel set against the backdrop of the 1980s space shuttle program and the extraordinary lengths we go to live and love beyond our limits. I don't need to know more than that. I trust Taylor Jenkins Reid with my life at this point. I absolutely love her novels, and I have especially really adored her novels set in a historical setting. I have already pre-ordered a special edition of this, and I'm going to be getting to it as soon as possible. All right, moving on into the 10th, I have 2 releases to talk to you about, the final releases for June that I am anticipating, one of which I am very much looking forward to. It is the newest release by S.A. Cosby called King of Ashes. S.A. Cosby is one of my favorite authors of all time. I absolutely love this man and what he's able to create. He creates really dark, gritty crime novels, and I think that he is just such an expert at it, and I really appreciate his writing. His writing is very beautiful for the subjects that he covers. Now, this just says that it is a Godfather-inspired Southern crime epic and a dazzling family drama. I don't need to know more than that. I'm not entirely sure how I feel about the Godfather part of that. I'm not really interested in like mob stories, but I trust S.A. Cosby with my life, and I will read anything that this man puts out, even if he wants to like publish his grocery list. So I will certainly be adding this to my TBR. All right, and the final book that I have for June is the newest release from V.E. Schwab called Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil. Now, I am not super enamored with V.E. Schwab like a lot of people are, but the book of hers that I absolutely love was The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. This sounds like it's going to be more in line with Addie LaRue than any of her other stories. This just says Santo Domingo de la Calzada, 1532, London, 1837, Boston, 2019. 3 young women, their bodies planted in the same soil, their stories tangling like roots. One grows high and one grows deep and one grows wild, and all of them grow teeth. I have no idea what that means, but I'm going to trust V.E. Schwab with this story, and I am really looking forward to it. All right, moving on into July, I only have 2 books to talk to you about here. First is the newest release from Ruth Ware coming out on the 8th called The Woman in Suite 11. And if I understand this correctly, this is actually a follow-up to The Woman in Cabin 10. I believe it follows the same main character character? Yes, it says, Lo Blacklock returns to attend the opening of a luxury hotel only to find herself in a white-knuckled race across Europe. Now, I know a lot of people really didn't like The Woman in Cabin 10. I think that that's probably one of the Ruth Wares that gets the most hate, but I actually had a decent time with it, and I think if you go into it with the proper expectations, you would have a good time with it too. Ruth Ware writes very slow burn, character-driven, Agatha Christie style-esque mysteries, so you can't go into her stories expecting edge-of-your-seat, fast-paced thrillers. She did write one of those called 0 Days, and I thought that she did it very well, but ultimately her books are more on the slower side, slow burn mysteries, you know what I mean? And so I'm excited about this. I know that a lot of people probably won't want to pick this up because it does follow the same characters, but again, Ruth Ware, another author that I will read anything that she writes. All right, and this final one that I have for July is another highly anticipated release because it is going to be the first adult thriller from Holly Jackson called Not Quite Dead Yet. I absolutely love Holly Jackson's young adult thrillers. In fact, I still continue to read them because I trust her with them. I think that she does a great job of them and she's not afraid to go to dark places, even though they are YA. So I really want to see what she can do in the adult age range. This says, in 7 days, Jet Mason will be dead. Jet is the daughter of one of the wealthiest families in Woodstock, Vermont. 27 years old, she's still waiting for her life to begin. I'll do it later, she always says. She has time. Until Halloween night when Jet is violently attacked by an unseen intruder. She suffers a catastrophic head injury. The doctor is certain that within a week, the injury will trigger a deadly aneurysm. Jet has never thought of herself as having enemies, but now she looks at everyone in a new light. Her family, her former best friend, turned sister-in-law, her ex-boyfriend. She has at most 7 days, and as her condition deteriorates, she has only her childhood friend Billy for help, but nevertheless, she's absolutely determined to finally finish something. Jet is going to solve her own murder. You know what's really interesting about this? The reading challenge for the 52 book club just came out, and one of the prompts, very challenging this year by the way, is to read a book with a spoiler in the title, and I think that this could count. If she really does succumb to her injuries in 7 days, this could actually fit that prompt. That's just a thought out there for those who are participating in that same challenge. All right, everybody, we are almost there. I only have August and September left, and I only have one release to talk about for August. It is the newest release by Stacey Willingham called Forget Me Not. Now, I'm tentatively excited about this. I really enjoyed Stacey Willingham's debut and sophomore novel, but I really disliked A Flicker in the Dark, and so I'm nervous about this one, but I'm really hoping that I love this as much as her first two. It says, 22 years ago, Claire Campbell's older sister Natalie disappeared on her 18th birthday. Days later, her blood was found in a car, a man was arrested, and the case was swiftly closed. In the decade since, Claire has attempted to forget her traumatic past by moving to the city and climbing the ranks as an investigative journalist, until an unexpected call from her father forces her to come back home and face it all anew. With the entire summer now looming ahead, a summer spent with nothing to do in her childhood home with her estranged mother, Claire decides on a whim to accept a seasonal job at Galloway Farm, a muscadine vineyard in coastal South Carolina, less than an hour away from where she grew up. At first glance, Galloway is an idyllic escape for Claire. It feels like the perfect plan to pass the time. However, as soon as Claire starts to settle in, she stumbles across an old diary written by one of the vineyard's owners, and what at first seems like a story of young rebellion and love turns into something much more sinister as it begins to describe details of various unsolved crimes. As the days stretch on, Claire finds herself becoming more and more secluded as she starts to obsess over the diary's contents, as well as the lingering feeling that her own sister's disappearance may be somehow tied to it all. So I'm actually really intrigued by the synopsis of this. Like I said, I'm going into this tentatively, but at the same time, I want to trust Stacey Willingham with the story. So we're gonna see how it goes. Also, if I did not say, this is coming out on the 25th of August. Also, really quickly, I completely forgot to mention the newest release from Lisa Jewell coming out on June 24th called Don't Let Him In. Of course, that is a very highly anticipated read by me. I absolutely adore Lisa Jewell. This follows 3 women. It says, restaurateur Patty Swan was the life of the party until the day a man pushed him in the path of an oncoming train, leaving his 20-something daughter Ash and wife Nina devastated. Shortly after Patty's funeral, the 2 women receive a surprise in the mail, a note and a package from Nick Radcliffe, an old friend of Patty's, and a nondescript lighter that once belonged to him decades ago. This unexpected gift draws Nick and Nina closer together, much to Ash's dismay. Martha is a small-town florist with dreams of expansion. She lives with her second husband Al, her baby, and 2 sons from her prior marriage, but they never seem to have any money, and with his constant traveling for work, she feels like a single parent, especially when an emergency makes her realize something needs to change. But Nick and Al may not be who they say they are, leading these 3 women on a shocking collision course, wishing they had heeded a warning: don't let him in. Once again, I think that's going to do something that Lisa Jewell does really well, and that is taking multiple perspectives and weaving them together in a way that you might not necessarily expect. So I'm absolutely here for it. Of course, I could not do this video without talking about this book. All right, and I lied. I actually had another one for August that I had written down as September. The 3rd book in the Assistant to the Villain series by Hannah Nicole Mayer comes out. It is called Accomplice to the Villain. I'm not going to say anything about that here just because it is the 3rd book in a series, one that I absolutely adore. I loved the first book. I really enjoyed the second book, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how the story ends in this one. So this is definitely another highly anticipated release by me. All right, since I mistakenly put the Hannah Nicole Mayer book for September, I actually only have one release to talk to you about in September, and it is another highly anticipated release. It is the newest release by ML Rio coming out on September 9th called Hot Wax. Y'all know how I felt about If We Were Villains. I haven't read the new novella she just came out with called Graveyard Shift, but I hope to get to that as soon as possible so that I can read it before this one. This one actually seems like it's going to be very, very different. This blurb just says, a nostalgic love letter to the 90s rock and roll scene. Hot Wax follows a band of rocker misfits, rivals, and trailblazers on the tour that could have catapulted them to stardom if it all hadn't come crashing down. This is giving me Daisy Jones and the Six vibes if it were set in the 90s. This is classified as a mystery thriller, so it's not supposed to be literary, historical, contemporary fiction. This does seem like it's going to be fully in the thriller category, which makes me a little bit more comfortable with it, but I'm still a little bit nervous about it. The final release that I had on here, I originally had down for September, but apparently it has been moved to October. It is the newest release from CJ Cook called The Last Witch. I recently just read The Book of Witching by CJ Cook. It was my first experience with her, and I really, really enjoyed it, and it definitely made me want to read more from her in the future, especially any kind of witchy related books. And I believe this one is also going to be a historical horror. Helena Schuberin should be doing what every other young wife is doing, keeping house, supporting her husband, bearing his children. But when her husband's footman, Leopold, with whom she was having an affair, is found dead, Helena is accused of killing him. Worse, she is accused of being a witch. Imprisoned with 6 other women, Helena is plunged from her bejeweled life of comfort into a world of terror when a cursed witch totem is smuggled into the prison. The prisoners attempt to use it to conjure escape, but the totem is the severed hand of a murdered woman, and when a ghost appears to possess each of the prisoners, Helena realizes her life is in danger both inside and outside the dungeon. Does Helena risk her life and the lives of others by standing up to a man determined to paint her as the most wicked of all, or is the world beyond this one the real threat? So like I said, I recently just read The Book of Witching by CJ Cook. I really enjoyed it, and now I'm very intrigued to read more from her. I actually put some of her backlist on my TBR as well, just because I enjoyed it so much. All right, everybody, that is it. I know that was a lot. I have now been filming this video for over an hour, but I wanted to talk about all of these releases because I am really, really interested in all of them. I think 2025 is going to be a big release year. Now, of course, this list is purely meant to be books that I am anticipating. It's not meant to be a comprehensive list of the biggest titles that are coming out in 2025. So please feel free to comment down below and let me know any new releases that you are anticipating. Or if you've made it to the end of this video and you are not feeling chatty, just go ahead and leave me a book stack, an individual book, because I just talked about so many of them. And as always, if you like this video or if you just like me, please be sure to give it a big thumbs up. Throughout the month of December, from December 1st through December 25th, I'm aiming to post one video every day. So if you don't want to miss any of that content or chaos, please be sure to hit that subscribe button down below. I would love to connect with you in any of those future videos or on any of my other social media platforms, which you can always find linked down below along with any books featured in the video. Until next time, y'all, bye.